Do you like grapefruits? Do you want to grow one in a pot? How about one in the ground? Well, today is your lucky day because today I'm going to be telling you everything you need to know in order to successfully grow your own grapefruits in a pot or in the ground. Water requirements, sun requirements, fertilization, everything, including my own personal tips for growing these trees for the past few years. So let's go ahead and get started. Alright guys, so today I got two varieties. I'm actually gonna show you how to grow successfully. And also towards the end of the video, I'm gonna be giving you a taste review of a white variety and also a red variety, which is called Ruby Red. But before we get started, let's go ahead and talk about the growing conditions for this plant. Sun requirements. Grapefruits in general need full sun anywhere in the United States. As always, if it takes full sun here in the desert, for me, it will take full sun in yours. Now, you gotta keep in mind, if you grow in the shade, the trees actually look nicer. The leaves are gonna be bigger, they're gonna be greener, they're gonna look beautiful. But guess what? You're not gonna have as much fruit. Why is that? Well, these trees, citrus in general, require direct sunlight in order for them to produce fruit. They may not even flower in the shade, especially if your tree is in the ground. In the containers, they don't seem to have that problem, but then trees in containers do not produce that much fruit. So if you really want fruit production, you want to give your tree as much sunlight as possible. What's enough sunlight? Well, that depends on the UV rating in your area and how much sunlight you actually get. In my area, it's super high, guys, so I'll give you an example. In the summer, sun rises at around 5:30 in the morning. If this tree right here got direct sunlight all the way through 9-10 in the morning, that is enough sunlight for the entire day. Let's talk about winter care, guys. How much cold can this tree take? Can they take frost? Well, let's talk about it. The coldest temperature these trees have taken in my area, it is 19 degrees sustained temperatures for 12 hours straight, for several days in a row. Did the trees take damage? No, they did not take damage. Now, one thing you gotta keep in mind though about cold temperatures is, your fruits are ripening in the winter time, just like the ones I have over here. So if it gets too cold, guys, you know what's gonna happen? Well, your fruits are actually going to freeze. Yes, they're going to freeze and they will drop. So if the temperatures in your area are not ideal to grow this tree, they're too cold, for too long, your fruits are gonna freeze and they're gonna drop. Now, are your trees gonna make it? Of course they're gonna make it. But one thing you gotta keep in mind though is, why are you growing this tree? Are you growing it because you just want a grapefruit tree to say you have one, or you actually want fruits? If you want fruits and it gets that cold in your area, I would say low 20s, sustained temperatures, your fruits are going to freeze. In the teens, they will freeze for sure. So, at what temperature will the tree actually start taking damage? That's usually gonna be in the single digits or low teens. If your soil freezes in the winter because it's so cold in your area, at that point, I do not think your grapefruit tree in the ground is gonna make it. What can you actually do in order to grow your tree successfully then? Well, you can mulch the area heavily. You can put like 1-2 feet of mulch all the way around the tree, so that way the area around the root ball of your plant will not freeze. That's one of the things you can do, or you can simply grow it in a container. Now, frost protection. Do you need to frost protect this tree? No, you do not. These trees will take frost, no issues. No issues at all in my area as long as I had these trees in the ground. Let's talk about the root system of grapefruit trees. As any other citrus, they have a combination of deep roots and shallow roots, fibrous roots actually. Normally, when they're young, they're gonna have a lot of fibrous roots, and as the trees get older, especially once you put them in the ground, they will start growing their deep roots in the ground. So, is it safe to plant in closer structures? Well, in my honest opinion, it depends. If you're actually worried just about the trunk, then obviously it's not gonna be an issue. You can see this tree right here, it's a white variety of grapefruit. It's been in the ground for over 20 years, and this is as big as the trunk is going to get. It's not really that big compared to other trees, and you can see the actual trunk and the root crown. It's not bad at all. And I have actually concrete about 3 feet away from it and no issues at all. The root system of citrus in general, it's not really invasive. You're not gonna have issues with the root system. What you're gonna have issues with if you plant in close to structures is the canopy of the tree. The canopy of the tree, depending on your variety, for grapefruit specifically, well, it's gonna expand out, guys, easily. I would say 15 to 30 feet. It depends on the growing conditions in your area. So, can you plant in close to structures? Yes, you can. That brings us to the tree structure. Well, these trees naturally are bushes. All citrus are bushes. They're not trees naturally. The only way you can actually get a single trunk like this one is by pruning them. Otherwise, when they're young, they're actually gonna branch out lower to the ground. So if you want a tree, especially when you first get one in a container like this one's over here, you gotta understand all these trees come grafted. If you're not sure what grafting is, I'll make another video explaining this process. But just to summarize it, this point right here, from the bottom right here, this is not a grapefruit. From here up, this is a grapefruit. What they did is they got a branch from an actual grapefruit, a named variety. This one specifically is called Ruby Red, and then they grafted it. They stuck it together with another seedling, one grown from seed, and by merging the two varieties together, they made one tree. Grafting, what it does, it guarantees the variety that you're actually buying. Because if you eat a grapefruit and you plant a grapefruit seed in the ground, you're not going to get a grapefruit, because the seeds inside most citrus out there are not true to the fruit you're eating it. So you eat a grapefruit, you plant a seed, you may get an orange, you may get a lime, you may get nothing, you may get something that looks similar but it's completely sour, you may get, it doesn't matter. You're not gonna get exactly the same fruit that you got it from. This is why all citrus are grafted. So if you're gonna be pruning your trees, it's very important to see where the graft point is. You can clearly see where this one is. Any branches growing below this point, you always wanna cut. Any branches going above that point, well, if you want to have a single trunk tree, like the one I just showed you, then you want to prune all these branches right here. And keep doing that for the next few years. Eventually your tree is going to get older and it will stop growing branches below the point that you're actually pruning. Now, if you want to bush your tree, well, naturally it's just going to do that by itself. So you really don't need to do anything. Just keep in mind, prune all the branches that are below the graft point. And then you're gonna have a bushier tree. Flowering and fruiting. When do grapefruit trees flower? Well, normally in my area that is going to be early spring. For me, spring usually starts around March, but it will all depend on the ambient temperatures in your area. If the ambient temperatures in your area are warmer, then obviously they're gonna flower earlier. If the temperatures in your area are colder, they're gonna flower later. Now, from the time that you actually see the flowers to the time that you actually have edible fruit like this right here, it will literally take almost a year, guys. These fruits right here are the flowers that I got last March. Now they are ready for picking, so I can actually pick it right now and eat it, which we will towards the end of the video. One thing I want to talk about besides flowering and fruiting is a lot of people assume citrus in general, there are some varieties that fruit throughout the year. Well, that is false, guys. And let me show you, see if I can find one. One thing that is unique to grapefruits is they will never drop. They literally stay on the tree until they just can no longer hold themselves onto the tree. Like this fruit right here, guys. This is not last year's crop. This is a year before. This fruit right here is literally almost 2 years just hanging on the tree. It's huge. People come over and then they think, they're amazed by how big this is, and then they ask, you know, if I have this variety for sale. And I tell them, this fruit is like this big because it's been on the tree for so long. Now compare that fruit to this one right here that is actually ready to eat. It's literally 2 to 3 times the size. But this fruit right here is no good, guys. It's actually super dry on the inside. It's like there's no juice in there. Let me show you. It's dry. It's literally all the energy, all the water inside the fruit is spent. But for whatever reason, they hold on the tree forever. So if you don't pick your fruits, they will just sit there. And then when people come over to your house, they're gonna think you have a variety of fruits throughout the year. No, they don't fruit throughout the year, guys. They only flower once and you only get one crop. Now, if you don't pick that crop, they will just hang on the tree just like this. All right, so that brings us to watering. How do you water a grapefruit tree? Well, it's no different than watering any other citrus. The more you watch my videos, guys, the more you will realize a lot of these trees, the way you take care of them is extremely similar. Because trees are just living beings just like you and I. And just like you and I, they drink water and they eat. So, simple. If you have your citrus or your grapefruit in a container, just like this guys right here, the way we teach people how to water is by using the 50% rule during the growing season. And that is, you water your plant, you soak it completely, right? Until you know 100% that it's wet. Then, during the summer, you will check every 6 to 12 hours. You're gonna stick your finger all the way down, and then you're gonna feel for moisture on the tip of your finger. And you're gonna do that every 6 to 12 hours. The minute you no longer feel water on the tip of your finger, however long it took to go from wet to that point, that is exactly how often you will water this plant. Because that will be about 50% dry. So however long it takes to go from fully wet to about 50% dry, that is how often you water this citrus right here. Just to give you an example, here in the desert, in the summer, with over 100-degree temperatures in the summer, we water these trees right here twice daily. Now, it's winter time. Right now, it's taking about 3 days for that to happen. But remember, it's different. Plants sweat for the same reasons you do. The more they sweat, the more water they will drink, the faster the soil around the root system of your plant will dry out. It's winter, it's cold. Plants are not sweating as they do when it's over 100 degrees every single day. This is the reason why it's taking 3 days for that to happen. So let's say you just planted your tree in the ground. So how do you water it? Well, if it's the first season, that means it's the first summer your tree is in the ground. The way you're gonna water is very similar to the way you water a tree in a container. And that is, you're gonna stick your finger a few inches away from that trunk into the ground as far down as you can. You're gonna feel for moisture, and you're gonna see how long it takes to go from fully wet to the point where you no longer feel moisture on the tip of your finger. However long that takes, that's exactly how often you will water your citrus the first season, the first year in the ground. Now remember, as your tree gets older, the root system of your plant will go straight down in the ground, and that is where it's drinking the water. Now year 2, year 3, year 4, at that point you're gonna need to deep water. I have another video where I talk about deep watering specifically, so link in the description if you want to learn more about it. Let's talk about fertilization. So if your tree is in the container, any slow release fertilizer, synthetic fertilizer will work. Do not worry about specific citrus fertilizers. That's a myth. You don't need anything specific. What we use is this right here. We can buy it locally, very easy to get, it works great, and we use this on every single plant we have at the nursery. Whether it's a fruiting plant, flowers, tropicals, house plants, it doesn't matter. It works on everything. Because you know what? Plants don't care about numbers. Plants care about food. Now, the way we fertilize these trees right here, if your tree is in a container, like this guy's right here, we'll be fertilizing these trees probably in the next 2 weeks. Season starting, night temperatures are warming up, so that's when the trees are actually going to start growing. And when your trees are growing, that's when you feed them, because you want them to have food when they start growing. And what we do is, this fertilizer comes with a little scooping here. You just eyeball it. You just sprinkle it all the way around, like about half a scoop per tree. It's a little short there. And you're done. And you know what, guys? Depending on how often we water our trees, we do this once and sometimes twice a year, depending how the trees are looking. Now this right here will last for several months. And mind you, in my area, I'm watering these trees once to twice daily. Every time that you water your tree, you will be flushing the fertilizer down the drainage holes on the bottom. So your plant is not going to even be able to eat most of this fertilizer in here. The reason I like slow release fertilizers is because they do not release all the fertilizer all at once. What happens is every time you water it, it will dissolve some of the fertilizer, and then your plant will be able to eat it slowly. That's the best way to feed your plants. You don't want to dump all fertilizer all at once, because your plants naturally do not eat like that. They eat a little bit at a time. So you're not wasting fertilizer too. And that's how we fertilize our trees in containers, because we find that's the easiest way to actually feed them. Fertilizing your tree in the ground, it's actually even easier than using synthetic fertilizers in your containers. You can use any organic material, anything. You can use compost, you can use cow poop. As you can see, I have some horse poop in here. You can use goat poop, bat poop, whatever poop you want to use. What you do is maybe once or twice a year, you just sprinkle that stuff all the way around the canopy of your tree. Never against the trunk, in case it's not fully decomposed, because you don't want that stuff sitting against your trunk. And then what actually happens is, guess what? You're not feeding your plant directly. This is organic. So what you're actually doing is, you're feeding the living organisms in the soil. You're feeding the roly-polies, you're feeding the crickets, you're feeding the bacteria, you're feeding everything in the ground. The fungi, all those critters, they eat this organic material, because this organic material is too big for your plant to eat. So what they do is they eat it, then they digest it, breaking it down in the process, and then themselves they will poop. Now their poop, if it's small enough and it mixes with water, then your plant will be able to eat through a process called osmosis. That process takes a long time. It's a slow process, okay? So, and all that I just talked about requires water. This is why it's very important to water your plants. Because even if you put all the fertilizer that you can find anywhere online, all the magic juices out there in the soil, if there is no water, your plant will not be able to eat. Your plant requires water to eat, okay? So when using organic material, you want to make sure that you put some mulch in the ground. You want to water the entire area, just shallow, you know, and you're not watering your plant. You're actually watering all the critters in the soil so they can stay alive, they can eat, they can poop, and then your plant, through deep watering in the future, will be able to eat all that organic matter. You will not be able to overdo it. This is why it's extremely hard to burn your plants when using organic fertilizers, because you're not feeding your plant directly, you're feeding it indirectly. Container growing. Can you grow a grapefruit in a container? Due to the type of root system these plants have, a combination of deep roots and fibrous roots, yes, you can grow them in a container. And as you can see, yes, you can actually get fruit. Now, one thing you got to keep in mind with growing plants in containers is they rely 100% on you for sustainment. Yes, 100%. So let's say the trees are about to flower. Let's say the trees have flowers on them, but then you forget to water because you're so busy, and you know, plants are the last thing in your mind. You forget to water. Well, guess what just happened? Your plants will drop their flowers immediately, and you just lost your crop for the entire year. That easy, that quickly. You can see my citrus are about to flower. So right now, I do not want to let them go fully dry and wilt, because those little buds right there, they will drop overnight. Now, let's say that you actually did everything correctly. You fed your plant, you water it, you baby it, right? You got fruits, but then you get tons of wind. Yes, tons of wind. You live in an area where it's super windy. Guess what's gonna happen? Your fruits are gonna drop, because these trees are not strong enough to hold a lot of fruit. Even if you get a bigger citrus in a bigger container, the fruits will drop a lot easier than one in the ground, simply because of the size of the root system. It's not about the size of the plant, it's about the size of the root system. The bigger the root system, the stronger your plant will be. And that will not happen in a container. That will only happen in the ground. Alright guys, that brings us to my personal growing tips. If you grow your citrus in a container, it's going to sunburn the first summer. That is natural, don't worry about it, just water your tree when dry, use a 50% rule and you will be okay. If your trees are curling, well, if they're curling up, that means you didn't water. Your tree does not have enough water. If you water again, most trees are not gonna uncurl. If you want to learn more about that, link in the description. In my area, citrus are susceptible to bugs, critters, especially aphids and thrips. So what usually happens is the young leaves, when they sprout, like for me in the next few weeks, aphids and thrips, well, thrips specifically, they lay their eggs on the leaves, especially when they're first sprouting, and they just suck the sap, the juices out of the new growth, and by doing that they will deform the leaf, like this ugly looking leaves right here. This is not curling, this is just deformed from thrips sucking up the juices from the leaf when it first flushed, or like this one right here. If your trees are in containers, this is extremely common. It's only cosmetic damage. It's not going to kill your tree. Another thing to keep in mind, if you forget to water, your tree suffers for whatever reason during the rooting process, well, guess what? Now your tree is going to take even longer to root itself in the ground. Like the grapefruit I showed you earlier, yes, that tree actually took 2 years to root itself in the ground, because my goat ate it to the ground almost during the rooting process. So that tree looked like a stick, hardly any leaves for 2 years. But then the third year, that thing just exploded. If the sun in the summer hits your trunk, especially without any bark like that, directly, for hours, days on end, with no breaks, a lot of the times your trunk will burn. And by that, what's going to happen is it will turn black and it will split. It will start sapping, and if you don't fix it, well, guess what? Your tree may die, at least above the point that it's actually taking damage. To prevent that, especially in areas with extreme temperatures, you can wrap it. Use some burlap, shade cloth, just wrap the trunk. Once it gets older, it's no big deal because it has bark to protect itself. Or another thing you can use is you can paint the trunk white. This is why a lot of the times you see citrus with their trunks painted white, is simply to reflect the sun. So either paint it or shade it until the tree gets older. And that will only happen in areas with extreme temperatures, like 100 degrees plus every single day without any breaks. So we're gonna go ahead and taste this grapefruit right here. Initially I thought it was a ruby red, but it's not. It's actually a white grapefruit. So if you're wondering what a white grapefruit tastes like or it looks like, this is what it looks like. Sometimes they're a little bigger, sometimes they're a little smaller, but you know what, generally this is exactly what it looks like. So this is a white one, and this is the other tree that I planted in the ground. Since I wasn't sure I actually had a ruby red in the ground, well, we went ahead and planted a ruby red a few years ago. So this is what the ruby red looks like. So let's go ahead and pick one. Some of them are going to be a little bigger, some of them are going to be a little smaller, so I'm just going to go ahead and, in my experience, I'm going to pick a little smaller because it seems like the smaller ones most times are going to be a little sweeter. Alright, so we got both of them right here. This is going to be the white one, this is going to be the ruby red. As you can see, the difference on this one is going to be more of a yellow skin, and that's it. This one over here is more of an orange, reddish color, so you can tell the difference between the two. So there are two ways to peel them. One, you can use your fingers, or you can actually cut them in half. So just to make it a little bit easier today, I'm gonna go ahead and cut them in half with a knife. is the white one. And this is the red one. As you can tell, the difference on the inside, this one's more white and this one's red. Alright, let's go ahead and get started with the white one. Just to show you how easy they peel with your fingers, you just peel it off. Now the rind is actually thick compared to other citrus. Anyways, let's go ahead and taste it. Not too bad. It's actually sweet, but it's also just a start. I think that is going to be one of the main features of the white varieties. Let's go ahead and try the red one. Let's go ahead and peel it with my fingers. It peels just the same as the white one. And let's go ahead and taste it. You can see they're very juicy. Alright, check this out. The red one was just as sweet as the white one, but the red one is not as tart as the white one, giving you an impression that this one's sweeter. In reality, in my opinion, they are both just as sweet. This one here, though, is less tart. So if you don't really like the sour stuff, go with the red one. If you're really into the sour stuff, go with the white one. And that is my review of grapefruit, guys. Very easy to grow. And then another thing that I forgot to mention in my personal tips is when your trees are young, the taste of your fruits are not going to be consistent. This is normal when the trees are young, especially if they're rooting themselves in the ground. Some years are sweeter, some years are more tart. And also, they will taste different depending on what part of the tree you picked them from. That is normal. Plants are not machines. If they were machines, they will produce the same stuff every single year. But they are not. Anyways, if this was helpful to you guys, don't forget to like the video, so that way it gets recommended to other people. Because if more people like it, the more it will get recommended, and the more people will actually see what true gardening it's all about. Anyways, don't forget to subscribe if you haven't, because like 90% of you guys that are watching right now are not even subscribed to the channel. If I forgot to mention something, comment below, and I will see you next time.